Today, New Jersey Democratic Senator Bob Menendez walking into federal court, where prosecutors alleged he put his own greed ahead of his country, in opening statements calling him corrupt, accusing him of taking hundreds of thousands of dollars in payoffs, including gold bars, a Mercedes convertible, and other items as part of a widespread bribery scheme. For years, Robert Menendez betrayed the people he was supposed to serve by taking bribes, the prosecutor told the jury. Among the charges, prosecutors allege Menendez acted as a foreign agent, accepting payoffs to help Egypt get more military aid, and abusing his position as the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee by allegedly helping a New Jersey man get a multi-million-dollar business deal approved by the Egyptian government. This was not politics as usual. This was politics for profit, the prosecutor said. Menendez has pleaded not guilty. His attorney telling the jury today he was not an agent of the Egyptian government, but an American patriot who took no bribes. Menendez previously said that over $400,000 in cash the FBI found in his home, in suit jackets, a safe, and shoes, was just money he took out of the bank over 30 years.
I have withdrawn thousands of dollars in cash from my personal savings account, which I have kept for emergencies and because of the history of my family facing confiscation in Cuba.
And the Menendez defense today suggesting his wife, Nadine, was responsible for the gold bars found in their home, saying they were in her closet. He did not have a key to that closet and did not know of the gold bars in that closet, the defense attorney said.
And Jonathan, join me now. Nadine Menendez has also been charged here.
That's right, Lester. Nadine Menendez has pleaded not guilty. She will go on trial separately this summer due to illness. Meanwhile, a businessman who earlier pleaded guilty is expected to testify against Senator Menendez.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.